So this year for Aboriginal education throughout the entire district, we have a large focus which is called Reconciliation Through Art. And as this is the final year in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission across Canada, we really wanted to have that as a focus. The carving portion of Reconciliation Through Art connects our students with the greater Canadian-wide project called Project of Heart,
which has been a collaborative, inquiry-based exploration that saw the cooperation of the classes working together to explore Canada's residential school history.
What we have is elders coming in and speaking to the students and telling them their experience with residential schools, how it's impacted them personally, their communities, their families, their culture, and also how it's affected Canadian society as a whole.
To hear from a survivor of a residential school is really interesting because it's like a primary source. Rather than hearing about the experiences online or reading about them in my textbook, I'm actually hearing about someone who, saw this themselves, and it's easier to connect to them because they're there and I can ask whatever I want and get the answers that I need.
It's way more intense because you're always being told about what happened to other people. But when you're being told what happened to a specific person by that person, you realize more how intense it must have been.
And we also have students working with artists, Aboriginal artists, a weaver named Eloise Charest and a carver named Terry Jackson, who've come in and done weaving and carving with the students and also told them their stories. And the students have gained an appreciation of the art and everything that goes into it.
In the forest with Eloise, we did learn a lot. I knew about cedar trees and cedar weaving, but it was cool to learn about culturally modifying, which is when you pull off the bark from a living tree, and stripping bark from the dead cedar trees, and just learning all that, and then how to soak it and weave it and take it all apart to just the small part of the bark that you can use.
I can't learn in a classroom, not as well anyways. I mean, when I'm out in the forest, it's a much different experience.
I did take away something from it, knowing that what we do today is nothing like what they did back then. Now, if we want something, we go to the store, buy it. Back then, you actually had to make it.
One of our local elders, Ganishka, visited the elementary schools in the district, and she brought the grandmother program, which is designed to encourage students connecting with their own grandparents and discovering their own heritage. We brought Bev Lambert in from Surrey, BC, and she did some Métis jigging and dancing with the students, as well as talked about the Métis history and where they came from and the heritage of the Métis people in Canada.
I think that doing these art projects have made me think differently in the way that, just like the personal connection, actually making them makes me feel more engaged with what we're learning and the content, and it makes me feel, because I am Native, I'm Métis, so it just makes me feel all the more closer to my culture.
At the end of the Reconciliation Through Art project, the students did a week of filmmaking and expressing what they'd learned and their ideas about residential schools and reconciliation through a film.
And I didn't have an idea for a long time, but once we got going, me and Anthony just wrote out a script and it sort of worked. And then when we were getting feedback, it turned into more of imagine if this happened to you. And so then it became an imagine film. And it was, instead of just saying this happened, it's like, well, imagine this happening to you. It's not just thinking about it to other people, it's thinking about it happening to you, and that's a whole other way of looking at it, which makes it kind of deeper and more, and it's easier to understand. If they told me and all my people that we were wrong in every way. Imagine if no part of me or my people was accepted.
And I think that was the most important part, that they made real connections with real people and then were able to internalize that and turn that into their own art piece to express what they were thinking and their opinions about the residential school system in Canada.
There's all these, Canadian stereotypes, Canadians are the nicest people in the world, Canadians are this, that, and the other thing. But you hear about the past and the past of our history, and you learn that we're not what we're all made up to be, because with the Aboriginal people in the residential schools, it's really, it's almost terrifying to think of what happened.
It forced them to take a look at their own previously held opinions and then change those opinions into informed opinions, so that it's not just an opinion that these students have that it's sort of been grandfathered down to them. Now they have an informed sense of history to be able to discuss these controversial issues with some degree of knowledge.
Logging on Perry Ridge. Logging on Perry Ridge is a very harmful ordeal. It is both biologically and politically wrong. It is Sinaiic's land, and the Sinaiic should be consulted before any logging takes place. This is affecting burial grounds downriver. How would you feel if your ancestors' graves were being upturned?
This project has been very place-based, in that the students are connected with the elders, they're connected with the speakers who've come in, they're connected to the land. And so it's a very deep, powerful learning, because it's here, it's about them, it's about their community. And from there they can look outward and see how it connects to the region, to the country, and internationally. But starting here, where it is meaningful to them, is incredibly powerful.